Today, when I read the church bulletin that was sent out via email, I saw an article in there from Steve Higginbottom about a gentleman named Mr. Coots that died from venomous poison during one of the snake handling services that they had at their church. And it went on to talk about how misunderstanding the word or misapplying it can actually cause you, in this case, physical harm as well as spiritual harm. He goes on to say this is why we need to study the book to make sure that we know it well and that we write it on our hearts so that we have it to prepare ourselves for any issues that may arise. There's a sentence in there, though, that stuck out more than any others in this article, and that was, it said, while most of us reading this will not make the same mistake that Mr. Coots did, we may make other mistakes that could be just as harmful to our spiritual health. And that just struck me really, really hard because of what I had already experienced during Steve's lesson on Sunday when he was talking about Exodus 36 and the people there that had given so much that Moses actually had to make a commandment to them stating to stop bringing us things. He restrained the people from giving because they had given so much, so joyously and so much. And as I was listening to that, I thought to myself, I don't think I've ever personally been restrained from giving to somebody. Why not? That should be on my bucket list. To have somebody say, you're giving me too much, just stop. It should be on all our bucket list. But then it didn't take me long to realize why. As I sat there and I started analyzing my giving when I give on Sunday mornings. And I noticed that I had become rote in my giving, and I'd been methodical in my giving. It was almost like I was coming here on Sunday mornings and paying a subscription to be a member here at Northside Church of Christ with the same payment every Sunday. And while I was giving, and I wasn't upset with my giving, I wasn't joyous. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about that and how easy it is to slip into this trap of falling into this situation where when you give, think about what you're giving. If you're giving with a joyous heart and with a joyous mind, when you're joyous, you're usually smiling or you're glowing on the inside. So when you give on Sunday morning, does it make you smile? Or are you just in passing writing a check or pulling some money out of your wallet and throwing it in but not really thinking about it? Don't make the mistake I did like that. Don't be the one that is putting it in there and not thinking about it. It should feel like a sacrifice and at the same time feel very rewarding as you do it. Thankfully, that's my weakness in giving. I don't have a problem with being service to others. I love that part. That always makes me happy. I don't think there's any time I've ever turned anybody down anytime they ask me for help, and I hope it never happens. And it could be simple as bringing somebody to church or going to Joplin with our team and helping out after the tornado. And I love the fact that when we go and do stuff like that, there's several of you guys are there with us. And so that's very uplifting. But my weakness was the giving on Sunday morning. Consider just for a moment what our brothers and sisters under the old law gave. Not only did they tithe or give a tenth of their blessings and increase, but they were also instructed in Leviticus 23 verses 22 not to reap the edges of their land. They sowed that ground, they nurtured those crops, and they planted those crops, made sure that they grew, spent all that time on them just like they did the rest of their field. And then they left them there for the poor and for the sojourners that were traveling through the area, strangers. That had value to it. That cost them time, it cost them money. So not only were they giving a tenth of their things from time to time, they were also giving of the edges of their fields. So in excess of that. And then in Leviticus 19 verses 33 through 34, it says, when a stranger sojourns with you in your land, you shall not do him wrong. The stranger who sojourns with you shall be to you as the native among you, and you shall love him as yourself. For you were strangers in the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. So in these verses, they're told to take care of the sojourning strangers as if they were their own. In addition to all these other things that they were doing and giving, they were also being hospitable, feeding others, taking them in, providing them shelter, taking care of any of their needs. I'm sure they probably gave them clothing if they needed it. They took care of them as if they were one of their own, and they loved them. So they gave in that respect as well. So all these things that they did had value. They were giving their time, they were giving their money to help others. So when I look back at all the different things that they did back then, and if I truly analyze what I'm given now, would I say that I'm even up to par with the average giver of that day? I don't think I would have been. It's something I need to work on. I was happy that after Steve's lesson that's when we did the contribution last Sunday. I'm glad it was after that lesson, because after that lesson, it just hit me like a ton of bricks. I gave joyously that day, and I was excited to do it. And I hope I continue to stay that path. But one other example of giving I want to give before I finish tonight is, I want you to think for a moment about giving of yourself rather than money. And as you do that, I want you to think back, and I want you to think about Jesus and the perfect peace and comfort that he left, just leaving heaven to come down to this earth, this broken world, to live as one of us. That alone is a huge sacrifice. He was already there, and he came down here to be with us. And then I want you to think about all the things that he did growing up in his life on this earth. At the age of 12, or roughly 12, we see an example of him talking to some grown men in one of the temples of the synagogues. I can't remember where it was. And he was astonishing them with his knowledge. His dedication to his Father and his Lord, his Father was already defined at that age. He was already giving of himself to learn and to teach others at that age. That's just 2 years older than Devin. Then he spent the first part of his life as a carpenter, which I love that profession for him. I think that's just great. But with the kind of heart that Jesus had, that he undoubtedly was helping people with things they couldn't handle on their own. He probably made things and built things for people and gave it to them instead of charging them for it. He was a giving person, and that undoubtedly he probably gave people things that he made with his own hands. And then later on in his life, he taught, he was teaching, he was loving, he was healing people. Everything he was doing, I don't recall a single instance where he just gave somebody a financial windfall in all the verses that I read about Jesus. And so his giving is even better than the financial giving as well. So there's two types of giving we can give of ourselves, and we can give of our gain. And so Jesus is the perfect example of how to give of yourself. He spent his whole life in service to God and for us, and he did the same in his death. So as we walk away from here tonight, let's locate our weak spots if we have them. Some of us may not have this. This may not be a weakness for some of us. But if it is, identify that weak spot. Don't let it become rote. Be joyous in our giving. Because wouldn't it be wonderful for somebody to say, Northside, just quit giving? I just think that would be wonderful. Anyway, that's all I have. So if anyone here tonight would like to come forward and acknowledge Jesus and all that he gave for us, or if there's something that's weighing heavy on your heart or your mind, please come forward for the prayers of the congregation as we stand and sing.